Mavericks owner Mark Cuban is one of the more outspoken owners in the NBA. During his tenure with the Mavs, his teams were often successfully led by European basketball star Dirk Nowitzki, and they even won an NBA championship in 2011. With Dirk's career coming to an end, the team needed to draft a new young star to build around, and they got that in Luka Doncic. Back in 2018, Cuban did an interview about Luka and was asked, how important is it that Luka's had top basketball experience outside the NBA, which is referring to Luka Doncic playing professional basketball from the age of 16. Cuban's answer was controversial, but interesting. He said, "It is important because you're used to people being older than you, but I think he just learned how to play basketball, and that's the biggest gift. When you're gifted as he is, and you actually learn to play the game, if you look at the basketball education of kids starting at 11 years old in Europe, and particularly Slovenia, which is basketball oriented. If we took our best kids, and 7 years before they were McDonald's All-American, we sent them over to Slovenia to get an education, they just learn how to play basketball, while our guys learn how to dunk and put together mixtapes." Now, Mark Cuban really emphasized Slovenia in his answer, but I think he should have been a little bit more general by saying the Balkan region, because the Balkans is where the best European talent comes from. The Balkan region is made up of the countries of Slovenia, Croatia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Serbia, Montenegro, Kosovo, Albania, and Macedonia. Prior to 1991, this region was all combined into the country of Yugoslavia, and I'll tell you what, their men's national basketball team was consistently one of the best in the world. In the Summer Olympics, the national team won gold once, silver twice, and bronze once. In the FIBA World Cup, Yugoslavia placed gold and silver 3 times each, and bronze twice. So they were pretty good. There are 3 main players from these teams that were important to talk about because of their greatness. Drazen Petrovic was a shooting guard who became a European star at a young age. He was drafted 60th overall by the Trailblazers and came to the NBA at 24 in 1989 because of a weird Yugoslavian professional basketball rule which prevented him from playing in the NBA up until 28, but somehow he got around that by playing in Real Madrid. It's kind of confusing. But once in the NBA, he was really underutilized by the Trailblazers because coaches didn't think that European players could be built around, and at the time that was pretty prevalent, and some of it is still kind of existent today, but it's kind of changing in the NBA. So he was pretty upset with his role on the team and asked to be traded, and he was traded to the New Jersey Nets, and there he basically became an NBA star. He would put up pretty good stat lines and was very impactful on the team, but unfortunately, at the age of 28, at the peak of his career, he died in a car accident, and it was very sad, and it really devastated the NBA world. And although he never really got to play out his whole NBA career, he's had a huge influence on Croatian and European basketball players and the coaches that have to coach European players in the NBA. Another player that was very important to Yugoslavia was Vlade Divac, and he started his professional basketball career in Europe, but then was drafted number 26th overall by the Lakers in 1989, and he played 16 years in the NBA as a center for the Lakers, Hornets, and Sacramento Kings. And basically, he was an above-average role player and even made an All-Star game in 2001. Because of his solid NBA career and national team success, Vlade was inducted into the Basketball Hall of Fame, and now he is mostly known for making some pretty bad moves as the GM for the Sacramento Kings, even though I believe he was recently fired. The third major player from the Yugoslavian national team was Toni Kukoc, and he was a successful European pro basketball player. He was drafted with the 29th overall spot by the Chicago Bulls in 1990, but only came over to the NBA in 1993 to play for the Bulls. And he was a major contributor to the second Bulls three-peat as the 6th man for the team. And I'm sure many of you guys know, after watching the Last Dance documentary with Michael Jordan, Toni Kukoc's impact on the team. And he played a few more years with the 76ers, Hawks, and Bucks. And overall, he's had a lot of success with the national team and throughout his NBA career. Currently, he works in the Bulls organization as a special advisor to the owner of the team. After 1991, Yugoslavia split up after some bloody wars, but now the Balkan region produces some of the top European basketball talent in all of Europe. Nurkic was drafted 16th overall by the Chicago Bulls and came over to the NBA in 2014, and he has become a solid NBA starting center and was a major contributor to his Denver Nuggets teams and now the Portland Trail Blazers, which he plays on. He's been a pretty good, solid player. Bojan Bodganovic was drafted 31st overall by the Miami Heat in 2011, and he came over to the NBA in 2014 to play on the Brooklyn Nets. He has played on the Nets, Wizards, Pacers, and now he is a key contributor on the Utah Jazz. Since entering the NBA, he has really continued to develop and get better as a player, and now he's basically a solid NBA role player at the forward position. He shoots, he drives, he does pretty much anything as a forward. He's a pretty solid NBA player. Dario Saric was drafted 12th overall in 2014 by the Orlando Magic, and he joined the NBA in 2016 as a member of the Philadelphia 76ers, and he played very well on the Sixers as a backup and a starter, but he was later traded to the Timberwolves and then the Suns, and hasn't had as much success as he did on the 76ers, but I personally think he's been underutilized. Overall, I think he's a solid backup or starting big man / forward position. I think he's pretty good. Mario Hezonja was drafted 5th overall in 2015 by the Orlando Magic, and he was a highly touted prospect, but hasn't really lived up to expectations. He's played on the Magic, the New York Knicks, and now is on the Portland Trail Blazers. He's basically a backup forward in the league, but really hasn't lived up to what people thought he was going to be as a top 5 overall pick, you know? Dragan Bender was drafted 4th overall by the Phoenix Suns in 2016, and he was a highly recruited European prospect, and a lot of scouts actually compared him to Kristaps Porzingis. He's played on the Suns, the Bucks, and the Warriors, and unfortunately, he's played in the G League, which is very disappointing for a high draft pick like he was. However, he is trying to stay in the NBA as a stretch four, but so far he hasn't had much success. Maybe he might end up finding his role on an NBA team. Ivica Zubac was drafted 32nd overall by the Lakers in 2016, and he has developed pretty nicely as a center, especially by the Lakers organization. He was traded to the Clippers, where he became a very serviceable big man and center for their team. He's looked pretty good so far, and he's pretty young, so I expect him to only get better in the future and be a major contributor for the Clippers' playoff runs. Nikola Vucevic was born in Switzerland but is of Montenegrin descent and moved there as a teenager, although he's also lived in Belgium as well because his father was a journeyman in the EuroLeague. He was drafted 16th overall in 2011 by the Philadelphia 76ers and has played for the Sixers and also the Orlando Magic, which he plays on now. He's basically a very solid starting center and even was an all-star in 2019. And now at the prime of his career, he's basically the best player in the Orlando Magic and has been putting up a pretty good stat line. Darko Milicic was a highly touted prospect and was drafted number 2 overall by the Detroit Pistons after LeBron James went number 1 overall in the 2003 NBA draft. However, Darko was followed by Carmelo Anthony, Chris Bosh, and Dwayne Wade being drafted after him. Around the NBA, he is known as one of the biggest draft busts in NBA history because of the other players that were drafted around him. Throughout his NBA career, he's played for the Pistons, Magic, Grizzlies, Knicks, Timberwolves, and the Boston Celtics, and he's played for that many teams because he never really established a role for himself, and he's even gone on record of saying that he doesn't really enjoy playing basketball. So as a result, he was never really good in the NBA, but he did end up winning an NBA championship basically as a bench scrub on the 2004 Pistons team. However, he is still one of the biggest draft busts in NBA history. Nemanja Bjelica was drafted 35th overall by the Washington Wizards in 2010, and he came over to play in the NBA in 2015 on the Minnesota Timberwolves. Currently, he plays on the Sacramento Kings, and he's basically a solid three-point shooting forward, nothing too flashy, but his three-point shooting percentage is pretty good, and he is a major contributor for that team. Boban Marjanovic went undrafted in the 2010 NBA draft, but came to the NBA in 2015 on the San Antonio Spurs. He was playing pretty well overseas, and he was a 7'4" center with a decent offensive game. So far in his NBA career, he's played on the Spurs, the Pistons, the Clippers, and now he's on the Dallas Mavericks. So basically his role in the NBA is a bench center used at certain times in the game for when his size and his post-up and offensive shooting skills are needed. He's not really used that often, but he is fun to watch as an NBA fan. Nikola Jokic was drafted 41st overall by the Denver Nuggets in the 2014 NBA draft, and he came over to the NBA in 2015, and basically he has surprisingly developed into a really good NBA center and even an all-star with really good passing ability and pretty good shooting ability as well. And he was an all-star in 2019 and 2020, as well as he made All-NBA First Team in 2019. Also in 2016, he made the NBA All-Rookie team. So now Jokic is basically the Denver Nuggets franchise player and is a leader for their NBA playoff runs. He's basically their best player and the franchise player for the Denver Nuggets. Bodganovic was drafted 27th overall by the Phoenix Suns in the 2014 NBA draft, and he came over to the NBA in 2017 to play for the Sacramento Kings. Basically, his role is a solid three-point shooting wing, and he does that to the best of his abilities. He's pretty good, and overall, he's still kind of young, so he only looks to be getting better as a three-point shooter. Goran Dragic was drafted 45th overall in 2008 by the San Antonio Spurs, and he's played on the Suns, the Rockets, the Suns again, and now he's on the Miami Heat. He was an all-star in 2018, he made NBA third team in 2014, and he also received the Most Improved Player award in the 2014 NBA season. Now, basically, he's a quality starting point guard, and he's been an important member for the Miami Heat in the last few playoff runs, including for the 2020 season. Finally, Luka Doncic has been an amazing young European prospect and basically showed that European players can play really well in the NBA, just like the previous players I mentioned. I believe he was even the youngest player to ever win the EuroLeague MVP, which was in 2018. And after that, he was selected 3rd overall by the Atlanta Hawks in the 2018 draft, and then they did that draft night trade with the Dallas Mavericks for the 5th spot, so now he plays on the Dallas Mavericks. He won the Rookie of the Year award in 2019, as well as getting on the All-Rookie team for the same year, and in 2020, he was actually named a first-time All-Star. So basically now, he's the franchise player for the Dallas Mavericks, which they're trying to build around him with Kristaps Porzingis, and he's going to be an important contributor to this year's playoffs, and I'm sure the playoffs in the future for the Dallas Mavericks.